I think the major thing to say about NFV is that operators around the world have decided that they are going to virtualize their networks. And they're going to virtualize for reasons of cost reduction, service agility, and increasingly because their competitors are virtualizing their networks and they feel that they need to follow suit. And we have operators that have announced very aggressive targets for virtualizing their networks, large majority of their networks by the end of the decade. And certainly from surveys we've seen operators really starting now to implement NFV in their networks. Maybe in a small way to start with. They've picked their use cases. Virtual CPE and Virtual Evolved Packet Core are some of the most common that we're seeing. But certainly they're getting real about it. And they've made technology choices. So for example, OpenStack as a virtualized infrastructure manager, they're making big bets on where the VIM's going to go. But there are still a number of challenges. As we get closer to implementation, we certainly see challenges around the operational aspects of NFV. And I think that is one of the hardest things to resolve at the moment. So we have big challenges around onboarding VNFs and their lifecycle management. We're seeing increasing concern over how VNFs are going to be assured in the virtualized network, and we're seeing, of course, a real interest emerging in security. How is security going to work? So, of course, one of the big aspects of operations that needs to be tackled is automation. Or how is the automation going to work? What are the pieces of technology that are going to automate the lifecycle management of VNFs, their placement on the infrastructure, their orchestration, if you like? That is a big consideration that operators are having to grapple with at the moment. And I think one of the other interesting trends is when we started this journey maybe 3 or 4 years ago, SDN and NFV were seen as very separate concerns, but increasingly we're seeing that the operators that are dealing with NFV are also looking at SDN at the same time. So those two technologies are really converging. So finally, I think the year ahead we're going to see more implementations, we're going to see actual rollouts, we're going to see a lot of fanfare when that happens, and that's going to inspire others, and there's going to be a lot of lessons that will be learned. I think we've learned a lot of lessons over the past year, and I expect more to come in the year ahead.
So the service providers today are faced with a interesting dynamic in the industry where many of the cloud technologies that have had a dramatic impact on the data center side of things are starting to become an opportunity for them, but also starting to cause challenges because consumers more and more are demanding anytime applications, always on, wherever they are, and that's feeding into the enterprise space. So these challenges and these demands, all enabled by virtualization and software, are putting the service providers in a bit of a quandary where on the one hand they have to continue to drive performance to meet the existing traffic demand while at the same time trying to take advantage of this agility and the new capabilities of these technologies to drive down cost and increase business revenue and services. And so with this challenge that they're facing, NFV presents itself as a great opportunity to really allow service providers to take advantage of what's happening in the virtualization space, what's happening with more software enablement in the network, to be able to create a network that allows you to deploy applications at a more closely aligned cost basis, but do it much faster so you can start to experiment with new applications, deliver them faster, explore, and if we do have applications that do succeed, accelerate their scale and build them out to more markets, but if they don't succeed, cause them to fail fast. And so really looking at driving new revenue models, but all while still looking at controlling costs. So the NFV technology adoption, we've definitely moved beyond understanding and educating each other as to what SDN and NFV are, and we've moved down to now to the initial commercial deployments. And so what we're seeing is early deployments like Orange's virtualized CPE offering, AT&T's Network on Demand, as examples of some of the early commercial offerings of NFV. And so we are in that interesting phase where we're moving out of that testing and trialing and starting to see some of those early deployments, which is quite interesting. And I think as we move forward, we're going to see more of the use cases around virtualized CPE and virtual EPC or Evolved Packet Core as probably being the most prevalent use cases explored today. But I believe that's going to quickly expand as service providers get more experience with NFV with these specific use cases. They'll, one, increase the applicability of those use cases, but also look to deploy more and more use cases to drive greater revenue growth. With NFV, really the challenges that we're looking at is, first of all, these are new technologies. When we look at service providers having to explore and investigate these technologies, many individuals in the service providers don't have experience with things like OpenStack or Chef or Puppet. So one of the things that we see with service providers is really gaining an understanding of the technologies and being able to educate their workforce to be able to address and integrate some of these technologies. And AT&T is a great example. Last summer, they announced, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal, and they talked about having invested 1 million people hours over the last 12 months in training their employees in these new technologies. So it gives you an example or shows how service providers really need to be thinking about how can they train their sales force. But hand in hand with that is very much looking at the return on the investment. If you ask a service provider to virtualize their network, deploy a platform without any indication of what that return will be, then the challenges are going to be on the financial side, where the CFO of the service provider is going to say, where's the return on this platform? And so from a business case standpoint, really, and where Juniper is working to help our service provider customers, is working with them to understand what are those business cases that are most prevalent, that could be most profitable, working with them to understand the financial metrics and looking at that financial model so that we can all understand and we can help them see which of those use cases are going to be most profitable, what that return will be, so that when they do go through the internal approval process, the financial individuals in the organization are saying, yeah, that makes sense, let's move ahead and start deploying. So Juniper is very focused on virtualization on NFV. We see it as a great opportunity for our service providers to fundamentally change the economics of networking, to drive new revenue streams while reducing their operational expense for greater financial return. And so with that opportunity, we've invested significant amount in looking at NFV and automation and how we can help our service provider customers. And what we've delivered is a very complete end-to-end solution that comprises both the physical networking underlay equipment from the leader in networking innovation and the leader in performance for networking, combined with some very innovative software capabilities. Our Contrail networking software providing the SDN control to really scale commercially, commercial grade, to meet the needs and the demands of large service providers. On top of that, Contrail Cloud, built around OpenStack, giving service providers the capability to spin up virtual machines of new applications and spin them down and scale them up as needed. And then finally, Contrail Service Orchestration, the ability to take new services, new functions, chain them into a new service very easily and graphically, store them in a catalog, and then in an automated fashion allow them to be deployed when a customer decides they'd like to select a service. They click a button on the web, and then in an automated fashion the business logic translates down into the networking commands, so that instead of having the business or services have to adjust to the network, now the network can adjust to the business and services. So really that complete solution, all wrapped in with a trusted partner and a vendor who can help them with this transition to the new virtualized stage through educational services, professional services, and a focus on openness and interoperability, allowing them to build a very modular, virtualized architecture so that they can bring in new technologies, all with a partner that can help them from a professional services standpoint to turn this into a reality.